You are listening to The Hero's Journey. I'm Dan Zarzana.
And I'm Jeff Garvin.
Let the journey begin.
Welcome to the show and happy belated St. Patty's Day to you.
Are we going to contend with another bad accent from you?
What do you think, boyo?
Oh, I was going to try to do a Daniel Day-Lewis accent, but I don't know that I can.
I'd like to propose that my accent just now was better than Leo DiCaprio's in the movie.
As egregious as it was, yes, I have to agree. I don't even know what accent he was doing.
I'm pretty sure Kevin Costner was the dialect coach for this film.
It was distracting, certainly. I did read that the dialect coach they did not want Leo and Daniel Day-Lewis's accents to be the stereotypical Irish brogue that you were just doing.
Yeah.
He didn't want that, or she. I don't know if it was a male or female. Anyway, they did not want that, so they taught them some other accents. Kerry,
I'll
Cork, Dublin.
I'll save it for the thing, but right from the top, we want to thank our patrons.
Yes!
Including our demigod-level patron, Dean Ethington. Who, fun fact, also designed our logo.
Yeah, he did. Thank you very much, Dean.
And our brand new patron who signed on just this month.
What?
I think so she could vote on this month's episode.
Oh, great.
My sister, Erica Garvin. Give it up for Ricky. So this means that we are 20% of the way to our first benchmark goal of $200 a month.
Wow.
At which point our patrons will be covering all the hard costs for this podcast. And we are currently trying to cook up some ideas for what to give our patrons when we hit that level. I'm thinking Dan's Braveheart photo on a pair of white socks as a gift.
Yeah,
just imagine pulling up your pant leg or your skirt to see Dan's face, with his tartan.
What about like a scented candle imprinted with your tattoos?
Ooh, that's a good idea. I think everybody would want like a burning 7K.
Your sleeve tattoo is pretty cool.
That's right.
I don't know. Anyway.
So what great idea do you have? Tweet us at Heroes Podcast, hit us up on Facebook, or just shout it into the vacuum of space.
And if you would like to gain access to exclusive audio and video content, including extra tidbits and peeks behind the scene and the right to vote on the subject of our next episode, go to patreon.com/heroesjourney to learn more.
This is episode 16, The Gangs of New York.
It's just Gangs of New York.
It's
not The Gangs.
This is episode 16, Gangs of New York. I hate it when people do that to my book. So dear Martin Scorsese.
The symptoms of being the human.
I'm sorry. That would actually be awkward and funny.
Gangs of New York was released on December 20, 2002. Wow, Christmas movie. Huh. There's snow, I guess. 2002 by Miramax. And that's before we knew Harvey Weinstein was a complete monster. Directed by American cinema legend and 12-time Best Director nominee Martin Scorsese, Gangs of New York was nominated for 10 Oscars, including Best Picture, but it won 0, nada, zilch.
That seems
bupkis.
It's definitely not Scorsese's strongest picture.
That was my thought the entire time I was watching this. It did win 2 Golden Globes, including Best Director and Best Original Song for U2, The Hands That Built America. It plays over the end credits, and it's really not. Two
things. Two things. Number one, it's clearly hey, let's get you two to write the Oscar song.
Yeah, well, because it's a movie about Irish immigrants to America, and hey, U2's Irish,
right? And as a person who is the great grandson of Irish immigrants, I can say that calling that song "The Hands That Built America" may be excluding quite a few other groups that maybe were slightly more abused
than had a hand. Sure,
just maybe. It was written by Jay Cox, Steven Zalian, who wrote Schindler's List and Searching for Bobby Fischer, and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo screenplay, and Kenneth Lonergan, and it was inspired by Herbert Ashbery's 1928 nonfiction book, The Gangs of New York.
Yep.
The film grossed $193 million worldwide against its $100 $100 million budget.
Wow.
That's a
Wow. Kudos
Wow.
to the producers for making that $100 stretch.
I'm pretty
quite
sure.
So far.
I'm pretty sure the fake mustaches alone cost more than $100.
The cast featured Leonardo DiCaprio, Daniel Day-Lewis, Cameron Diaz, and a supporting cast full of brilliant actors, including Jim Broadbent, John C. Reilly, Henry Thomas, Liam Neeson, Brendan Gleeson, all the Easons, every Eason.
Yeah, and the creepy guard from Braveheart is in it. Michael Byrne plays Horace Greeley.
The creepy guard from Braveheart.
Yeah, the one that assaults Marin.
Oh, that starts
gets
the
his cheek
whole
bitten?
thing.
Yeah, he's in it.
Oh, I thought he looked familiar.
Yeah.
I didn't place him. Wow. So another Braveheart connection, Brendan Gleeson, as I just said. And just like his Braveheart character, Hamish, his gang's character, Monk, favors large bludgeoning weapons.
Right?
That
And
might be a Brendan Gleeson actor choice.
yeah. Well, and he has a club in Harry Potter, so, like a big staff.
Oh,
right?
That's right.
It's in his contract.
Right.
Must have large, heavy bludgeoning. And the other Braveheart connection is that this also includes a hideously violent, bloody battle sequence. However, what Gangs of New York had that Braveheart lacked was terrible accents.
Oh, come on.
I mean, look, as an actor, I know what it takes to learn an accent and then consistently maintain it through emotional scenes.
It's not easy.
And Leonardo DiCaprio is arguably one of the best actors of our generation. Mm-hmm. He's fantastic in this movie. I can't think of a movie where he wasn't legit. But his accent is so inconsistent. I just can't understand. I just don't understand how you could, with all the resources available, with Martin Scorsese directing, they built this giant set in Rome for some reason to make this movie. Right. How do you not spend the extra 30 minutes a day killing that accent? I mean, John C. Reilly's accent was better than his. And meanwhile,
okay.
you've got Broadbent and Daniel Day-Lewis doing these great American, hardcore American accents, and neither of them are natives. Like, how does the star of this movie, and then, I mean, Cameron Diaz, too, it was like that accent came and went like the wind. Anyway.
I leave you in the grace and favor of the Lord.
Right, and then that was the last time she had an accent for the rest of the movie. Yikes.
All right, enough of the slamming. It's time to load your pistol, polish your cudgel.
Excuse me?
Jeffrey? Who wrote this?
Pardon me?
Draw your blade and prepare for battle against Gangs of New York.
Act 1, The Ordinary World, a.k.a. World of Common Day. We see our main character in his status quo normal life. Now, this is another film with a prologue, which sets up the backstory so that we can understand the ordinary world. And I'm not going to say a lot about the prologue, except that in just under 15 minutes, we meet every character in this film and are treated to a violent 19th century gang fight whose gruesome violence rivals the Battle of Stirling in Braveheart.
Treated to?
We are treated to. And I believe that the reason why it snowed in the movie was so that the blood would look cooler in the opening battle.
Sure. Okay.
So we also meet two of the only four halfway decent Irish accents in this movie, Liam Neeson and Cian McCormack as young Amster-Dan. Of course, both of them are actually Irish, so they get no points for that.
No points.
Sorry. So back to The Ordinary Day. Amster-Dan Vallon is the son of former gang leader of the Dead Rabbits.
Amsterdam.
He's the son of Priest Fallon. And 16 years ago, he watched his father get brutally murdered by Bill the Butcher Cutting before fleeing the 5 Points and ending up in Hellgate House of Reform.
Yes.
On Blackwell Island in New York City. And now he has returned to the 5 Points, his original neighborhood in New York City, to avenge his father's death and, wait for it, kill Bill. That's all I got.
Interesting. I mean, I took the World of Common Day as the prologue.
Oh, okay.
Because I think the call to adventure takes place there.
Oh, interesting.
Call to adventure where the hero is presented with a challenge which renders him unable to continue living in the comfort of the ordinary world. As Amsterdam's father has fallen in battle under the blade of Bill the Butcher, he lies dying in the snow, and young Amsterdam stands over him, holding his father, and Priest Vallon says, looking at his son finish it.
Yeah, that's so much better than what I have for the Call to Adventure. Yes, you win. Yes.
And the audience, at that point, Bill the Butcher drives his blade into Priest, killing him finally.
That's way better than what I have.
Ah, okay. What did you have?
I had written down, the boat pulls up in New York Harbor and all the Irish start piling out. And there's Jim Broadbent as William Tweed. And he's handing out, vote for me cards, essentially.
Right.
And he's he's basically bribing.
Vote Tammany!
That's right. So he's bribing the Irish coming off the boat with soup, come be part of our political party. And he hands Amster-Dan a vote for Tammany card. And I had written down that is kind of his call to become involved in the politics of the 5 Points as an adult. But I think your call is much better, so let's just go with that.
Okay. Rewind.
Which brings us to refusal of the call, which I'm sure I will also fail at. So, confronted with fear of the unknown, the hero refuses to engage in the adventure. Leo goes underground in the 5 Points mission when he comes back as an adult, and it's inside this brewery where he lived as a child to retrieve his father's blade and his St. Christopher medal.
St. Michael.
St. Christopher. St. Michael?
St. Michael.
All right. He does make him say it over and over again.
Who is this? St. Michael. What did he do?
Wait, Batman is in this movie?
He cast Satan out of paradise.
He cast Satan.
Good boy.
So then we've got Johnny Sriracha Sauce. Johnny Sirocco, played by Henry Thomas, who I didn't recognize until halfway through the movie. And I'm like, oh, that's Henry Thomas.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I caught him right away.
I knew he was familiar. Of course you did. And Jimmy Spoils, played really well by Larry Gilliard Jr., Lawrence Gilliard Jr. They accost Leo underground and try to take his stuff, but he kicks their asses and walks away. I saw
Right.
I saw that as refusal from without.
I loved that moment, too. He's like, I told you I didn't want to fight.
Yeah.
And Johnny says, why not? Look how good you done.
Yeah. Well, and I really enjoyed Amsterdam's character because he was torn. He wanted vengeance, but he also wanted a family. And here's this opportunity for him to have a family and a father, but it goes against his mission. So
Yeah.
I saw this as refusal from without. It's the world trying to prevent him from taking on his journey of vengeance.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I didn't have much for refusal of the call because I don't think there certainly isn't a refusal from within. Amster-Dan, when he leaves Hellgate, he's committed. I saw him as as an undercover agent infiltrating Bill's gang to get close to Bill so that he can then find the right time to kill him.
He certainly doesn't refuse his own mission until maybe a little bit inner conflict.
So all the refusals then do, as you say, come from without, from other forces. Next stage is supernatural aid, or meeting with the mentor, where the hero receives special counsel on how to operate in the special world. Joseph Campbell, in his Hero with 1,000 Faces, said the supernatural aid is the unexpected assistance that comes to one who has undertaken his proper adventure. I saw an early meeting with the mentor moment. I think it's very clear that Bill the Butcher is Amsterdam's mentor throughout this film.
Yeah.
Even though he's also his greatest enemy.
Yeah.
And calling back to the moment that I saw was the call to adventure, in that same moment, after Bill has finished off Priest Vallon, and he says to the surviving participants of the battle, he says, "Here's an." I was gonna try to do a Daniel Day-Lewis. He says to the surviving participants of the battle, "Ears and noses will be the trophies of the day,
but no hand shall touch him.
He'll cross over whole in honor." That was an awful Daniel Day-Lewis impression, but
it was way better than.
However,
it was better than Leo's Irish accent.
Oh, you're very kind. This is a moment where Amster-Dan learns respect for one's enemy. Bill's henchmen also grab hold of Amster-Dan and say, "What should we do with the kid?" And Bill says, "Give him to the law. See that he gets a proper education." Showing that Bill is not a complete psychopath. He could have just slaughtered the kid right then and there.
He's got some kind of honor.
Yeah, and there's moments throughout later, but that's what I saw as like the first moment of mentorship. You're making a face, so you disagree vehemently, I can tell. What do you got?
I don't disagree, because I agree that Bill is the mentor, and he has lots of mentor moments, but there's a key portion of meeting with the mentor, which is the hero receiving counsel on how to operate in this special world. And there's a scene where Johnny Sriracha, sorry,
Oh, sure.
Johnny
Yeah.
walks him through the 5 points.
Yes.
And tells us clumsily in an expo dump
Yeah.
who the gangs are.
Right.
And all this info dump that we will never remember.
And the fact that the dead rabbits are outlawed and no longer spoken of.
Right. So he updates us on 16 years of politics in the 5 points, which I thought was clearly a mentor scene. And then the other moment I had is when Leo and Johnny go to the pub to pay their tribute after looting the burned building. Bill notices Amster-Dan and calls him over and says,
Don't you never come in here empty-handed again. You gotta pay for the pleasure of my company.
and then Leo spends the rest of the movie paying, and it's in a literal and symbolic way.
Yeah.
And then they leave the pub with their first job, which is kind of like come with me to Alderaan.
Yeah, okay. That's good. Yeah, when they're ordered to rob the Portuguese ship that's in the harbor.
Yeah, I was like, what word is that? And then
Portuguese.
I went, oh, yeah. So that brings us to crossing the threshold. The hero must pass a barrier to enter the special world, and this crossing represents the hero's commitment. I put down that Amster-Dan takes his first step into New York gang life when he joins Johnny and his gang to raid the Portuguese ship.
Okay.
That's what I had as the crossing of the threshold. And another gang has beat them to it. But Amster-Dan is cunning, and he's like, no, we're going to get the body of this guy and sell it to the science
Right.
the science crew.
Yeah.
And the butcher's impressed by his ingenuity. So that's his crossover. Okay, now he has earned his place in the butcher's crew, the natives.
Okay, interesting. All right, so you're ahead of me in the story. Crossing the first threshold.
Deal or ordeal? Wait,
Crossing the first threshold, I'm way back now to Amsterdam, leaving Hellgate Prison and crossing the bridge from the island, Blackgate Isle, onto Manhattan with the blessing of the Reverend and the
Right.
gift of a Holy Bible, which he then, as he's crossing the bridge, flings it into the water. That's where we learn there's no reform that has happened here for Amsterdam. It was all an act.
Yep.
He's out now.
Yep.
And he's coming for Bill. Then makes his way, as you said, to the old mission and retrieves his medal. And he says a line which then informs his actions for the rest of the film. He says, when you kill a king, you don't stab him in the dark. You kill him where the whole court can watch him die.
Right.
And that's how you know all of these opportunities that Amsterdam has in private to kill Bill the Butcher. That's why he's not doing it in private.
Right. Yeah.
He's waiting. He's waiting for a public moment.
Yeah. Well, he engineers it from the beginning of the movie that it's going to be a public moment.
He tries to, yeah.
Well, I mean, he goes. You see him going to the pagoda and
Yes.
talking to the Chinese and setting that whole thing up.
Right, I know.
Interesting. I totally buy your crossing of the threshold. I think you're dead on with Call to Adventure, but I don't know that I like your crossing better than mine, but I validate it.
I saw what you identified as crossing the threshold, getting the job to rob the Portuguese ship as one of the first tests.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
Because now he has successfully engaged the gang and has earned the opportunity to join it.
Yeah, that's not bad. I
So
buy that.
that was one of the first tests I saw. So anyway,
I grant you that.
That
You win. Act 1
is the end
goes
of Act
to Dan.
1. No. All right, so let's take our first break, and we will return with Act 2.
Oh, Danny boy, what are you reading and watching and playing? It's been waiting a month to do that.
I haven't really had a whole lot of free time. I feel like that's a broken record. This is the third or fourth episode in a row where I've said I haven't had a lot of time. But I finished the Reckoners series by Brandon Sanderson. The third book was Calamity. And then there was a short story called Mitosis, a Reckoner's story, which takes place between books 1 and 2 that I didn't know existed. And had I would have listened to it between books 1 and 2, but I listened to it after book 3. So that's it. I've read all of Brandon Sanderson's Reckoner's material, at least that I'm aware of, and I enjoyed it. And I just started a book called Education, a Memoir by Tara Westover, who grew up in the mountains of Idaho as a Mormon survivalist.
Whoa.
And homeschooled until her mother suffered a horrible accident. Well, the whole family did. They were all in a car and had a really bad car accident.
Wow.
But her mother then wasn't really able to homeschool the kids that much. But Dad, he would not allow the kids. They used a midwife to give birth at home, and they did not register the children for birth certificates. They didn't send the kids to public school. There was no, like, the kids were off the federal radar.
So super well prepared for life in America.
And a lot of, it's interesting hearing her father's perspectives and everything about, what he thought the feds were going to do to the family. And I don't know, just the delusion that, at least from my perspective, it seems delusional. But anyway, it's an interesting read. I'm very, very early on in it. I have started watching a Netflix series called Peaky Blinders. It takes place in post-World War I Birmingham, England. And Cillian Murphy plays the... Big Cillian Murphy fan, huh?
I love Cillian Murphy. I have yet to see him in something where I didn't find him terribly compelling. I feel like he...
Well, check out Peaky Blinders then. He's the returning son of a family of essentially street thugs, but when he returns from war, he's got grander ambitions, and he, kind of like Michael Corleone in The Godfather, expands the family business.
I haven't read much either. I just finished a thriller by Rebecca Cantrell called The World Beneath. It's a Joe Tesla novel, and yes, I read the first one first out of respect for you,
Good
Dan.
boy.
Joe Tesla is
because I would have come out of my skin if you'd like, this is the fourth book. And
it's the second book. I just read the second book. It's about Joe Tesla, who is a millionaire CEO agoraphobe. Hacker. A millionaire CEO agoraphobe hacker. So he owns... Jeez. He's the CEO of a company that develops facial recognition software.
Okay.
And something happened to him before the story begins, and he is unable to go out in public. He's terrified to be outdoors. So he has moved into a beautiful Victorian home that is under New York City in the subway. Apparently, the main engineer who designed the subway system insisted that a home be built for him underground. I don't know if this is like an urban legend or if it's a real thing, but he lives in this home now, and he has keys to every door underground. There's a plot dating back to World War II that involves a mind control parasite and research into this mind control parasite, and somehow this research has resurfaced, and Joe has to kind of save the world from underground using his hacking skills and moving around under the city in the subway. So it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, and I might read the next in the series. It didn't really hook me like, oh, I love this. But the best part of it is Joe has a psychiatric service dog named Edison.
Okay.
And his relationship with the dog, his relationship with the dog is the best part of the book. The dog helps him almost to the point of like Lassie, bark, bark. What's that? Bark, bark, bark. And the longitude, And at one point they get separated, and it's like, oh my God, what's going to happen to the dog? So I read that, and then I've been playing Pillars of Eternity. I think we discussed that on the last episode.
Yeah, you introduced it last time.
Guys,
still loving it?
Gorgeous game, great story. There was like a big plot twist that happened that totally took me by surprise, and so I'm experiencing, being very late to the video game bandwagon and realizing what a great medium for storytelling it is. So I'm really enjoying that. As far as TV, there hasn't been a lot going on. I continue my love affair with The West Wing and The West Wing Weekly. Ami and I watch that weekly, and then I've been catching up on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which makes me laugh.
Yeah,
so
cool.
That's been my art consumption experience.
Yeah. I forgot to say, I did finish Assassin's Creed Unity, which was the one that took place during the First French Revolution. And the thing that I enjoy about the Assassin's Creed games is the historical reference. You interact with a lot of historical figures, real historical figures.
Huh.
My wife and I went to Paris a few years ago, and it was neat to be in the game and be in places that I actually was in real life.
Yeah. It
was kind of cool. Like I went to the spot where our hotel was. And like just stood on the roof and looked around, and I was like, "Oh wow, this is where."
So great.
It's just cool. I like that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I'm way behind on the Assassin's Creed series, but the next one is Syndicate, which takes place in London during the Industrial Revolution. So that'll be the next one I pick up.
I love it. I want to take a moment to invite our listeners to check out our Patreon page. Dan and I work really hard on this podcast, and we love it. And we're creating more ways for you to enjoy exclusive content and benefits. Right now, there are, I want to say, 4 or 5 tiers. If you just want to contribute, you can get in for any amount, or you can just click on the PayPal button and throw us some cash. Helps us buy supplies and equipment for the show, gas for me to drive up to Studio Z. Just helps us support the show so that it's not a financial drain on our lives. But by contributing, you can also gain the right to vote on the subject of future episodes, and you can gain access to exclusive audio and video content that's just for patrons. I think some of the audio exclusives we've released are really fun. One was a reel of outtakes, additional tidbits about the movies that we don't broadcast during the regular episodes. And coming up, there's going to be some exclusive stuff that's kind of behind the scenes about Dan and I and how we met and why we're doing this podcast and what it takes to produce it that we hope you'll enjoy. So you can enjoy those benefits at patreon.com/heroesjourney.
Let's get into Act 2. By the way, ladies and gentlemen of the audience, we know that it is pronounced Portuguese. I don't want any emails.
Portuguese.
The Road of Trials. Having crossed the first threshold, the hero meets allies, makes enemies, and must pass a series of tests to prove their worthiness. This is why I put the robbing of the Portuguese ship in tests, because this is Amster-Dan proving his worthiness to Bill.
All right.
But before that, we've got to talk about the allies.
We have roughly 9,000 characters to sort.
And there's a lot of shape-shiftiness happening here.
Oh my God, everyone's a shapeshifter in this movie.
Nobody is a real clear, except for one. Well, no, not even that, because I was going to say Monk, but his early interactions with Amster-Dan
leave us wondering.
Leave us wondering about his loyalty. Because
this is Monk McGinn, played by Brendan Gleeson.
Yes.
I don't think his alliance ever shifts. I think he's consistent, though we may see him.
I know, but from the childlike eyes of a 6-year-old Amster-Dan who watches Monk rifle through the pockets of the corpse of his father and take something and leave.
Right. I did have him down as the only legit, straightforward ally, pretty much.
Yeah. There's also Elliot. Johnny, played by Henry Thomas.
He does leave that
shapeshifts a bit.
Yeah, well, he leaves that trail of Reese's Pieces.
I did not believe their relationship. And that's one of the big problems that I have with this film, is that the characters that we are supposed to come to care for, I feel do not have enough that makes me want to care for them. Johnny being one, Jenny being another, Jimmy Spoils. There's a scene at the end where something really awful happens to Jimmy Spoils, and I'm like, I don't even know this guy.
Right.
Like, yeah, he was in a couple of scenes before, but I think we're meant to really feel something tragic there. And from a human perspective, just watching that happen and knowing that actually happened to people, real people, that is heartbreaking. But as a character in the film, I didn't really care.
Makes me wonder if they cut crucial scenes.
They had to. It's a 3-hour movie.
Right. So it makes me wonder. So, like that scene where Johnny walks him through the 5 points and sort of introduces all the different gangs. It strikes me as that's a scene where an editor would say, well, you have to have this so people understand.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder if they sacrificed other more emotional scenes in favor of exposition.
I'm sure they did, but it's a shame that they had to. It's a shame that the script wasn't tighter, because characters like that, when something awful happens to them, I just didn't care.
Yeah.
I didn't buy Amsterdam's reaction to it.
I want to jump on this bandwagon. The other thing that didn't work about this film for me was the whole draft rioting. The
voiceover?
The background, the whole background of this draft riot.
Okay.
I get it that was like historical background, but I never really cared about, it was like, we now step away from our characters and Leo DiCaprio will narrate this historical background that our characters really don't interact with until the final scene when the Union Army is cannonballing New York and all of a sudden it affects the gang war directly. You could have cut all of that out and it would have been a great revenge story.
Yeah.
And there's 40 minutes you can give back to characters that I care about.
Right.
But it was almost like Martin Scorsese or the whoever was trying to hold on to the historical significance of this movie really wanted to work that in there. The Irish were abused; they were taken advantage of.
But even then, the discussion of the Irish being a huge population of low class citizens and treated like dirt, I didn't connect to it. So I guess enemies, Bill the Butcher and his gang, obviously.
It's funny. The only two enemies that I had written down as straight out enemies are McGloin, which is, for those of you who didn't track all the names in this movie, because I had to look them up to understand whose name was what, because you can't understand half of what they're saying.
Well, and that's part of the problem again, is you don't care about these characters, so you don't care to know their name.
So McGloin is the Butcher's lieutenant who gets into a boxing match early on.
He's the little bald guy.
Yeah.
Little feisty bald guy.
He's clearly an enemy from beginning to end. And then Happy Jack, John C. Reilly.
Well, not from beginning to end, though.
Right, you're right.
He's an ally of Priest.
You're right. In the beginning,
he's on the side of the Irish. He is Irish.
Yeah. And he's, by the way, John C. Reilly's accent was consistent and believable, if not totally authentic.
All right, so let's get on to the test.
All right,
Jeez.
fine.
All right, so we've already talked about the ship.
Right.
Robbing of the ship.
Right.
Following that is the fist fight with McGloin.
Yes.
In the tavern.
It's great.
Meeting Jenny.
Yep.
And learning all the different names that the street folk have for different kinds of cut purses. And
right.
Jenny's a bludger, a female pickpocket, but she's also a turtle dove, somebody who goes to the rich part of town, puts on a outfit that looks like a housemaid, and just walks through the back door and just robs the house. And this is where Martin Scorsese has his cameo. He's the
wealthy
homeowner, the wealthy homeowner of that house.
But by the way, we never need any of that information again about all the different kinds of thieves.
Exactly.
It has nothing to do with the movie at all.
That is 20 minutes. Anyway, but Jenny has picked Amsterdam's pocket and stolen his St. Michael medallion, and so
St. Christopher.
It's St. I will.
St. Michael.
Half the fun of this podcast is me driving Dan insane.
And so Amsterdam goes and steals it back.
Right.
And there's the scene where he's got Jenny pinned against the wall. She's got a knife to his throat.
Right.
He says, all I want is my medallion back. So she opens the collar of her dress, and she's wearing a dozen necklaces and medallions and brooches and things that she's stolen. And he only takes his. He could take the lot, but he only takes his, which I think earns Jenny's trust, because she realizes that this is not a guy who's going to take advantage of her. Following that, Bill teaches Amsterdam how to knife fight. There's this mentor scene where he shows on a pig all of the organs and where they are on a human, and which ones will kill and which ones will wound and what causes a bleed out. It's one of those moments where Amsterdam could turn on Bill right in that moment,
right.
But he doesn't, because he's waiting.
Right. Oh, by the way, Daniel Day-Lewis trained with an actual butcher, because of course he did.
Yeah, of course he did.
Of course he did.
He is a method actor, so he spent time learning how to butch.
By the way, did you also find it slightly unrealistic that Bill's last name is Cutting? I mean, you could not get away with that.
I thought it was appropriate. He's based on a real man named Bill the Butcher Poole, but the real man died before the events of this movie. I think what I read, he died sometime in the 1850s. So this movie takes place in the middle of the bulk of the film takes place in the middle of the Civil War. So
right.
It's 1862-63. So they had to change his name.
But Cutting,
but yeah, Cutting
on the nose.
Is a little, it's a bit on the nose.
By the way, one thing I did love about the names in this movie, because I'm sorry.
I think you're about to say what I was about to say. Go for it.
No, you go.
No, do it.
So, of course, before New York was New York, it was New Amsterdam.
Why they changed it, I can't say.
And when Amsterdam tells him his name, it says, I'm Amsterdam. And he goes, Amsterdam. Well, I'm New York.
Right.
I'm the new. I have taken over you. I have erased you.
Exactly. Yep.
I love name stuff.
I've got more, but this is a long segment, so I want to share.
Johnny senses that Amster-Dan is plotting something big. Remember, there's that scene outside of
In Boss Tweed's offices.
Yeah. So
Yep.
I think that's another test. Is Amster-Dan willing to lie to someone who's been loyal to him since the prologue in order to exact vengeance? And yes, he is. He's willing to deceive the person we're supposed to believe is his friend from way back.
But again, there's a problem with that because I didn't believe that was the case. I thought he was just
An opportunist.
He was just protecting his plot.
Yeah.
He's not going to expose that to this guy that he barely knows.
But I think it's still a test of can he navigate that part of the vengeance plot, which is deception, right?
Right.
At the dance, Jenny is selected as the queen, and she rejects Johnny, but picks Amster-Dan. And they go at it afterwards, and they have a terrible on-the-nose scene where they literally examine each other's scars.
Yep.
Come on, Martin Scorsese. Do you, really? They look at each other's scars? Oh, that's such a... Anyway. So, and then this is another thing about this script that I hated is Amster-Dan finds out that Jenny slept with the butcher, and then he rejects her like she's damaged goods. The butcher's boxing scam gets busted up by the Metro Police, and Amster-Dan impresses him by having the idea, hey, let's have it on a barge.
Yep.
And then we won't avoid the legal stuff.
Right.
I'm wondering if this is part of your tests. Or if I'm crossing into your approach here. Bill the Butcher and Tweed have a confrontation, and then later at the theater, an assassin tries to kill Bill, and Amster-Dan pushes him out of the way, saving his life. He takes one in the shoulder, and this is really the moment where Bill begins to believe this guy is on my side. He's my ally. He just saved my life. He's in. Is that still in test for you?
No, that's the approach for me.
Oh, God. Okay. Well, then I'm going to stop because clearly the rest of my tests will be in your approach.
Huh.
But I'm supposed to cover approach.
Yeah.
Wah, wah, wah. All right. Well,
so go ahead.
Clunky intro to approach. The hero reaches the edge of a dangerous place where the object of his quest is hidden. Someone attempts to assassinate the butcher. Afterwards, the butcher treats Amster-Dan to a night of drink and opium and hookers. So in the morning, after this night of debauchery, Amster-Dan wakes up and Bill is sitting in a chair, watching him sleep next to Jenny. This is my favorite scene in the movie. This is where Bill the Butcher talks about killing the priest.
He was the only man I ever killed worth remembering. I never had a son. Civilization is crumbling.
I believe that Daniel Day-Lewis made the acting choice that he knew that Amster-Dan was the priest's son during this scene. There's evidence in the film to suggest that Bill the Butcher doesn't, but I think he does at this point, or he suspects it.
Why?
Just subtleties in the performance. I think Bill the Butcher in this scene is saying, please don't betray me. Let's have a father-son relationship here and have something meaningful happen instead of just more death. And there's a scene later with Johnny that contradicts that, but I have a pitch for why that happens anyway. But this is what made this scene compelling to me, is it's the first time we really see Bill the Butcher emotionally vulnerable and share with him what this defeat meant to him. He took his own eye out because he respected the priest so much. He wanted to, send him his eye and say, I tore out the eye that looked the other way. I mean, this is a guy who, he has a code and he has an honor and he enforces it on himself.
That's true.
So to me, this is the beginning of the approach, because this is Leo's last chance to bail out here. So then he kisses his head and says, God bless you, to Amster-Dan, just like a priest would. And Amster-Dan's father was a priest. So to me, this is that father-son weird crossover moment.
I don't disagree with any of that. It was...
So Jenny asks, who are you really, in bed after the guy... So she suspects, she knows something's going on between him and the butcher. Amster-Dan practices knife throwing. He's preparing for the confrontation. Bill straps on his blades. And then comes this scene where Johnny tells the butcher who Amster-Dan really is. And this is, to me, the turning point before the confrontation. So that's what I see as the approach.
We need to exchange our deal or ordeal cards.
Right.
at this point.
We wrote them out earlier because it seems like every time we come to this part of the podcast, one of us goes, "Oh wait,
Yeah, we have to write our cards.
So we wrote our cards during the first break.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Dan wrote Amster-Dan attempts to assassinate Bill.
yep, and that's what you selected, and
Yes.
that is what I say is the ordeal.
Agreed.
So we both agree.
We both
were
agree.
both right, and we were both agree. Okay, yeah. So
Yeah,
the
yeah.
ordeal, where the hero faces the ultimate test, often risking death to overcome his worst fear, sometimes actually appearing to die. This, I mean, to the letter.
Yep.
Absolutely. Is
Totally.
that summary of this segment is exactly the scene of Amsterdam trying to assassinate Bill and failing, and then Bill just brutalizing Amsterdam. Drives a knife into his gut.
Oh,
Forehead smashes him.
yeah.
Takes a red hot poker, a knife or something.
He heats up his blade
something
to
that's
brand
been
him.
in a brazier or something, heating
Yeah.
up to the point where it is red hot. And instead of killing Amsterdam, he says, witness the only man that the butcher ever spared, and he brands him right on the face. And that's the ordeal.
Yeah. Two things I would add. One, just before this, he does this knife throwing spectacle with Jenny.
Yeah.
And becomes increasingly violent and almost kills her.
I think the butcher was taking chances there. He was intentionally being frightening. It wasn't a circus act for him. He was looking to terrify people with this display.
Yeah.
The look in his eyes and the way he delivers his lines.
I do want to take a moment to say Daniel Day-Lewis is incredible in this movie.
Yeah, he's the one thing about this movie that I like.
His performance is so original and terrifying and hilarious. He's so great in this movie. I loved him in this movie.
Yeah.
He was it's funny, I agree with you that this movie doesn't work as a whole, but there were a lot of scenes I enjoyed and they were all Daniel Day-Lewis's scenes.
Yeah, me too.
And then the other thing is, so he takes his shot of Fireball, and then Amsterdam tries to shoot him.
No, he throws a knife at him.
Sorry, yeah.
And Bill knocks the knife out of the
You're right.
air. It was great.
For sure, this is atonement with the father. It's, to the letter.
Totally,
the hero must confront whoever holds the ultimate power in his or her life. Yeah, we're on the same page.
Wow, we caught up to each other. All right.
I love it. That brings us to reward seizing the sword, a.k.a. the ultimate boon.
And here's where I fail every single episode.
Well, we keep picking movies where it's really grim. So the idea here is that the hero, having faced his worst fear, seizes the object of his quest. And in these dark movies, it's hard to find what the reward is. But I see a reward and I see a sword here.
Okay.
The reward I see is...
Oh, I know what the sword is.
Oh, do you? You want to say it?
No.
Oh, okay. And do it. You do it. What's the sword?
I'm going literal here. It's
Yeah.
when Monk visits Amsterdam and Jenny in their little cave of recovery, when Jenny is nursing Amsterdam back to health, and Monk gives Amsterdam his father's razor blade.
That is the sword, yeah.
The razor blade.
And you leave the blood on it.
Blood stays on the blade.
The only thing I had as a reward was Jenny's love and loyalty. She's decided not to end up with the kind gift-bearing Johnny, but the second most violent man she can find. All right, so maybe that was just a dig at the movie. Well, that brings us to the end of Act 2. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll have Act 3.
All right, you better finish that coffee, because we're about to have an adult beverage.
I've always said if I can go from coffee to whiskey or coffee to beer inside of an hour, that's a good day. I'm literally finishing my coffee, and we're about to drink something.
Something.
Which means this is a good day.
Good. I am handing the blessed bag across the table to Jeff. Actually, I'm going to have to
Swing it. Yeah.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Uno, dos, tres.
Oh! Wow. I haven't been this nervous in front of a microphone in a long time. All right, here we go. Oh.
So this is where the themed beverage is revealed.
I am intrigued by the shape of this bottle and the weight. It is a...
Oh, as you're feeling it from inside the bag?
Hudson Manhattan Rye Whiskey. Boom! This story takes place in New York, which, of course, is bordered by the Hudson River.
Yep.
And, of course, There's a lot of whiskey in the film because the Irish love their whiskey. Hudson Manhattan Rye Whiskey. I can't wait.
And the 5 Points is in Lower Manhattan.
That's right. Toothletown distillers are bringing back the historic rye whiskey for which New York was well known till Prohibition. I love it.
I feel like it's Tuttleton.
Tuttleton? That
I don't know.
makes way more
it's
sense.
spelled Tut Hill Town, but I don't know. Tuttleton sounds...
Yeah, Toothletown sounds stupid. I don't know why I said it that way.
Toothletown.
Toothletown Gristmill.
Yeah, I have no idea. It actually...
Ooh, this is a small batch, like it's hand-numbered year.
Yes.
It's 2017 batch number 7.
It's a small distillery, and they do hand number their batches. Very, very small.
Let's drink this.
Small batch.
Hudson Manhattan Rye Whiskey comes in a wax cap sealed bottle, and the tab was non-present. So Dan went to open it with a knife, and Bill the butchered himself. He became Daniel Cutting. But the blood did not stay on the blade.
No, I washed the blood off the blade.
All right. Here we go. I'm going to open this.
So as you open that and pour, Tuttleton Spirits in New York, their website states that they are the first whiskey distillery in the state of New York since the repeal of the Prohibition Act.
Wow. It smells a little more caramely, more like a bourbon than a rye. It doesn't have that sting to it. But I can smell the rye. So what separates rye from bourbon is bourbon has to be 51% corn or more, and this is probably more rye than corn.
It has to be 51% rye.
There you go. All right, cheers.
Cheers.
Ooh, I love it. Yeah.
It's some I don't know that pepper's the right word, but
Well, it's got that rye bite.
it's spicy. Yeah.
But it's got a little caramely, molassesy kind of a undertone. But then it's got
nice.
It's got a somewhat medicinal finish, but not unpleasant somehow.
Right.
I don't know, like almost like a brandy, maybe.
Stored in new oak. Maybe that's where the caramelly-ness is coming from.
I don't know.
Because that new oak, that'll draw...
This is good. I wish I could project the scent to you through the microphone, listener, but this is an unusual tasting rye. I just finished a bottle of...
You did?
Yeah, what did I buy?
I don't know. You've always been a bourbon guy. I'm surprised you... Was it a gift or...
No, our friend Dean, who is our demigod member, had a bottle of bourbon, and I can't remember the brewer, and I went to go buy one, but I bought rye by mistake. It's like, oh, well, I'll drink it. And after the second or third glass, I was like, okay, now I know what it's like to drink a rye. But this is tastier than that stuff was.
Oh.
I'll have to look up what I bought.
I wonder what it was.
All right, so we're going to enjoy our Hudson Manhattan Rye Whiskey. We'll be back with Act 3.
Whew.
Dan, before we begin with Act 3, this is probably as good a time as any to confess something to you.
Yeah.
That I realized halfway through writing my notes for this movie.
Yeah.
Because I had this brimming anger at Leonardo DiCaprio, and I was taking it out on his accent. But he's probably one of my favorite actors of our generation.
Yeah.
I think probably Matt Damon would be the other.
Okay.
And you know how about every other episode I end up going off on some tangent about how I auditioned for something or I met that guy.
Okay,
and
so what did you and Leonardo DiCaprio audition
Well, I'm getting there.
for?
I'm getting there.
All right.
I think doing this podcast has made me miss acting because I keep having these experiences where I go, wow, like I have a weird, 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon connection to the movie. So when I was a young actor in the early 90s.
What? Go ahead. No. I was just going to ask you if you do have 7 degrees to Kevin Bacon.
Oh, I do. I was on Roseanne in
Yes.
the 90s, the original Roseanne in the 90s. And on the same episode was Tim Curry,
Okay.
who, by the way, is 9 feet tall and delightful. Like I went up to him and shook his hand and I was like, I am such a fan of yours. And he's like, oh, thank you so much. He's like super nice guy. And of course, Tim Curry was in Legend with Tom Cruise, who was in A Few Good Men with Kevin Bacon. Okay.
Nice. All right. Anyway, continue with your story. I'm sorry I interrupted.
So I auditioned for What's Eating Gilbert Grape in the early 90s. And of course, Leonardo DiCaprio ended up playing that role. And he was incredible and way better than I would have been. So really, it's stupid for me to be angry because He was great, and I would have sucked.
It's not that had you been in that movie, you would have had his career, which is what that's probably the fantasy that plays in your head. You're like, man, if it had been me.
It was, well, and that year I auditioned for that movie, and I auditioned for Primal Fear, which made Ed Norton's career.
Yeah.
So I was getting great auditions. I don't know, I don't remember who my agent was that year, but I was getting great auditions. I just wasn't booking them.
Yeah.
His character in Gilbert Grape is a mentally disabled person, which is a tender thing to play because you can overplay it and make it caricature-y and rude and embarrassing, and then you can underplay it and not have it be authentic. So I remember working really hard on that audition, and that's the only time I've ever gotten a thank you note from a casting director. And I wondered, did they think I was actually disabled? Was it like a, some sort of a pity thank you note? But
did you walk in character then?
Yeah.
Or did you not slate as yourself, or
it was not
for people who don't know, slating is when you're in front of the camera and you say, I'm Jeff Garvin, I'm X years old, and I'm from this agency, blah 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 blah, and then you do your performance.
This was not an on-camera audition. This was more of like a meeting with the casting director.
Okay.
And I probably said very little before we started reading the script because it was an intense role to prepare for. And at the time, I did not have the craft to jump in, when you prepare for something that physical. I mean, some actors are method actors and they stay in character the whole time. I don't know why, but when you're playing something that intense, it can be difficult to flip the switch. And so, I don't know, that was my insecurity because I'd never gotten a thank you note from a casting director. I thought, why would, anyway.
Yeah. Wow.
But that's my only connection to Leo DiCaprio.
All right, so should we dip into Act 3 here?
Indeed.
First segment of which is the road back, where the hero is pursued by vengeful forces that he disturbed when he seized the sword. Jenny has nursed Amster-Dan back to health. Monk has visited Amsterdam and returned his father's battle razor to him. This is the blade that at the beginning of the movie, Priest Valen is shaving himself, and then he intentionally cuts his own cheek, and that's where the moment he then hands the razor to his young son, and young Amsterdam is about to wipe the blade off on his pants, and Priest Valen says,
"No, son, never. The blood stays on the blade."
The movie opens with the sound of scraping, and then the visual fades up and he's shaving. Yeah, I just love that opening sound effect.
Yeah. A recovered and healthy Amsterdam announces the resurgence of his father's gang, the Dead Rabbits, by marching into Paradise Square in the 5 Points and hanging a dead rabbit from a wrought iron gate.
What a terrible name for a gang, by the way.
The Dead Rabbits?
A rabbit is not a strong animal, and a dead rabbit is like roadkill. That's just a terrible name.
I looked this up, though.
Yeah.
I looked this up, and I don't know if it's a what do you call it? Not a misnomer, but it's a mistranslation. There's a word, and I wish I'd written it down because this is actually interesting. But the word, I think in Gaelic, it sounds like rabbit, but it's like I don't know. Quiva, write in and do it. Record yourself saying this word, and
we'll put a link in the show notes. Maybe she can record herself on her phone and send it in.
But
That'd
anyway,
be great.
so there's a word that sounds kind of like rabbit, but it means a man to be feared. And dead then was a word that meant very. So dead rabbits was a gang to be very much feared. Is how that.
I'm speechless.
How the name came
I'm speechless about your research. That's just awesome.
I just wish I could have trained myself to actually pronounce it in Gaelic so that it would have sounded authentic.
All right, for sure we're getting Quiva involved in this.
Yeah, or any other Irish. If we have another Irish listener, any Irish listener, please help us out with this. Anyway, Bill the Butcher then sends Happy Jack Mulroney, who's is he the sheriff? He's a cop.
Yeah,
he's a cop and he's on Bill's payroll.
Right.
He sends him out to...
He's municipal police.
Who was originally in the prologue allied with Priest Valen, and he's now on Bill's payroll.
Right.
Sends him out to eliminate the murderer of this poor, innocent little rabbit. I loved that performance. Daniel Day-Lewis is so great.
Even when he's faking, he's a good actor.
Yeah. So there's a confrontation between Jack Mulroney and Amster-Dan in the dilapidated church. Amster-Dan kills Jack and hangs his body from a light pole outside in kind of like a crucifixion pose.
Yes.
And one thing I thought was interesting to note, his watch is still hanging from him.
Yeah.
That's what I saw was the road back. The vengeful force being Bill sending out someone to take care of Amster-Dan.
Ooh. My road back continues.
There may be more.
Tweed makes an alliance with Amster-Dan and the Dead Rabbits. They'll bring him votes in exchange for supporting McGinn for sheriff. The Irish are trying to get involved in the municipal government.
Yes.
McGinn wins. And
In
Bill,
a landslide.
In a landslide, yeah.
I loved the scene. The one assistant says, Monk's already won by 3,000 votes than there are voters.
Yeah.
It's like, whoopsie daisy.
They rigged the election.
Vote early, vote often.
Earlier in the film, McGinn and Bill pass each other in the street right after Happy Jack hangs his watch in the square to sort of prove that he's untouchable, that no one will steal his watch because they fear him.
Well, because he is on Bill's payroll.
Right.
They don't fear Happy Jack. Come on.
Well, but I think Happy Jack thinks they do. I think Happy Jack thinks he's a badass. McGinn crosses path with the butcher and says, hey, you think my
watch would be safe up in that lamppost, Bill?
Why don't you hang it up there and see?
Someday.
Someday is right.
he makes it clear it's a threat, like someday we're going to go toe-to-toe.
Yeah.
So McGinn wins, and Bill goes up there, beats him to death with his own cudgel. After marking, you're number 45, I'm going to put the 45th notch in your cudgel because you're now dead. Just beats him brutally and kills him.
That sound effect was very effective.
Yeah. The Irish have a funeral procession for McGinn, and as they pass, the butcher spits on the ground to express his disrespect for McGinn and the Irish, and Amster-Dan challenges him, and Bill accepts.
Right.
And then there's this whole other thing where the gangs are preparing for war, and there are draft riots going on, and that whole B-plot that doesn't really work. The Union Army is called out to put down the rioting Irish. Resurrection. The hero is purified by death, either in a literal or symbolic way, and returns to the land of the living a changed person. So the gangs meet in Paradise Square, which is a triangle, and is not at all paradise-like. And they start to fight. Meanwhile, the Union Army is shelling this part of Manhattan, and in the smoke of the city and under cannon fire, Bill the Butcher takes shrapnel in the gut. And the smoke clears, and Bill and Amster-Dan are feet from each other, both on their knees, and Bill looks at him and says,
Thank God. I die a true American.
and Amster-Dan stabs him right where he was taught as a kill.
Yep.
Bill the Butcher falls. Leo DiCaprio kind of falls over, and he's covered, and now he's the one covered in blood. So they lie there, and that, I guess, is his symbolic death. So I see that as the resurrection.
Okay.
'Cause he comes back to life after that. When Jenny comes and finds him in the street, because she's attracted to violence like a moth to flame.
Jenny is a worrisome character.
What did you have?
Representations of rebirth and resurrection were Amster-Dan begins rebuilding the mission. That attracts a new gang of dead rabbits.
Yeah.
Including Shang, Jimmy Spoils, and Johnny, who is on the outs with Amster-Dan because he
Right.
betrayed his real identity
Right.
to Bill the Butcher.
Boy, does he pay for that.
He sure does. I guess that brings us to the end, the last segment, Freedom to Live, or Return with the Elixir. The hero, having won some precious treasure or reward, now returns to the ordinary world to share the spoils of battle. Now, this is a dreary movie, and it's got a dreary, completely hopeless ending, where it's narration by Amster-Dan. He and Jenny are at the cemetery, and he's burying the razor blade, his father's razor blade, over Priest Valen's grave, which is right next to Bill the Butcher's grave. They've buried Bill right next to Priest Valen. And in the background, you see New York as it was. And then as Amster-Dan is talking about how really, at the end of the day, nobody knows who we were or what we did. It doesn't matter. None of us mean anything.
Yeah.
And the background is cross-fading into the New York skyline as it built up to the point where, I mean, you see the World Trade Center in the background. This film was made in 2002. It's probably one of the last films that has an image of the World Trade Center before it was destroyed.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the film. And
Yeah.
he and Jenny kind of fade away as they walk off. I didn't feel like there was any victory.
Yeah.
There was no closure.
I would say the elixir is vengeance.
Yeah. So,
And then everyone's dead except Amster-Dan and Jenny. But at least the 5 points also burns and everyone forgets them.
I guess.
The theme is be really violent and you'll get the girl.
But dang,
Yeah.
man. It's such a depressing film. And then cue U2 song.
Which is about
Whatever.
building America, but you've just told us that they had no impact on building America, so...
Yeah. Oh, and as time goes by, I'm sorry, I forgot to say the crossfading of the background of the building up of New York City as we know it today. The foreground is the cemetery degrading, all of the headstones and everything, to the point where it's just like
Weeds.
Yeah, it's just weeds.
Well, to close this gruesome film with a little bit of modern day perspective, this film was slated to come out in December of 2001, and they delayed it because 9/11 had just happened in September, and everybody thought it's too soon for a movie about violence in New York City. So since they delayed it, Scorsese kept working on it, but he refused to take the towers out of The Last Shot. He said, "No, let's not do that. This is New York as it was before. It'll change the whole movie if we take the Twin Towers out." And I respect that choice. I think it was a good choice.
Yeah, I do too.
And I'm glad they delayed it because no one would. I mean, this would have been too soon. That's it for this episode. Join us next month when we will be covering The Princess Bride.
All right.
If you'd like to earn the right to vote on our next episode, check out patreon.com/Hero's Journey.
If you like what you heard, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Tell your friends. And we would certainly appreciate a 5-star review on iTunes. Hey, Jeff, we got a couple more.
Oh, we did?
Yeah, we did. A couple more.
Wow,
5-star reviews.
Are we still unanimous 5-star?
We are, yes.
God, that's great. Thank you.
38-0. So thank you to everybody who has written a review and given us a rating. We really appreciate that. It helps the visibility of the podcast.
If this show inspires you, informs you, or even just makes you laugh, go to patreon.com/Hero's Journey and learn how you can support the show and get cool free stuff.
The Hero's Journey is produced by Jeff Garvin and Dan Zarzana with original music by Taylor Jordan. Thanks to Dean Ethington for designing our logo. In this episode, we sampled Hudson Manhattan Rye Whiskey from, I assume it's pronounced Tuttleton, Spirits.
Oh, it's delicious. That's better than Leo's.
I guess. You can visit them online at www.tuttleton.com.
Gangs of New York is copyright 2002 Miramax Films.
Please follow us on Twitter at Heroes Podcast. Like us at facebook.com/Heroes Journey Podcast. And check out our hilarious and informative show notes at heroesjourneypodcast.com.
Until next time.
Journey on.